What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Cacciapaglia, same as usual, sitting on the couch trying to make some money investing in fractional real estate. This is another video where I'm going to talk a little bit about Lofty AI. One thing I've talked a few times about staking, which is either lending your tokens or your USDC into these liquidity pools. I have where you're going to earn some return from there being trading in these pools, and so I have a couple videos in the link in the description below that I've already done about this, where I give you a little bit more of a basic description. Showed you my first couple properties in USDC that I staked. It's only been 9 days that I've been working on this, but you can see I've been busy. I've been put quite a few more tokens in there, a little bit more money. Um, and I wanted to one, if you look at my return so far on a percentage basis, it's 35%. And I think that is surprisingly high. I don't know if I've fallen into this in a time where I'm very lucky. You can see most so when you look in your account, I don't know why sometimes I have ones show up that I don't have staked or at all, but if there's this little house token, it means I have a property staked. If there's this money token, it means I have some USDC staked. And like you can see for this one, I have a little bit of both. um if when you take a look at these, you can see some of them I've made nothing on. Some of them have only been here a day or so. This is the one that I did that second video on. If you watch that, the historic returns for the last 30 days when I invested in it were extremely high. And what I've made on it is close to nothing, very, very low, because this is an annualized return, right? This isn't like I've made this much as a percent. No, I made 2 cents relative to $155. But then this is the Peoria one where this is the very first one I staked in those. I staked property tokens on this one versus the dollars on this one. Really USDC, but I'm going to call them dollars most of the time probably. And this is a property that I had tokens for that I bought just because they seemed discounted, but that were not yielding anything at the moment. They weren't collecting any rent. It's not that they weren't collecting rent; they're still paying back. Um, they're filling up their operating reserve, and so they're not distributing any rent. And so whenever you have tokens on the platform that aren't distributing rent, they seem to get discounted and sometimes too far, in my opinion. And that's when I started buying some of these. And so once I did, I staked them because I think. There's very little downside from my perspective in staking tokens. Um, as far as I understand it, your real risk there is that if that token value goes up in value, um, you're going to end up losing. You might give up some of the gains that it made. But if I'm staking in, if it's a token that is paying rent, you're going to give up a portion of your rent, possibly. Um, I think that though, if I'm buying these tokens because I just think they're discounted and a decent long or midterm hold to sell at some point in the future, and to collect some yield on them along the way, I think that's fantastic. You can see though, so those were two that I did the video on. They didn't work out very well yet, and I think that that's one of the things. I think sometimes this is just kind of chunky, because like you can see, this one I just put out a couple of days ago. But it's apparently just had a decent amount of trading happening in it. So if you annualize the return I got on that one, it's 172%. This one, I had bought these a while back, but I just recently put my tokens in the pool. One of the reasons I did that was because the they lowered the amount that they're paying out, just because they had, it's a short-term rental, and so it collected a little bit less income, and so it paid out a little bit less. And I think that whenever something like that happens, well, one, I'm giving up less rent when I stake those tokens because there's a risk of not getting your rent. It's not that you don't get any, you get it in proportion to how many tokens are in the pool compared to how many people put tokens in the pool. Um, I don't know if it's exactly how that works, how the calculation works, but I could tell I really only get about half my rent on these tokens today. Um, but you can see, I also made $5 on this investment. And that doesn't seem like very much, right, compared to 1,100. But when you think about it, it's in 2 days or 2.5 days. Um, this is the annualized return on that. And so a couple of things I wanted to just show you about. One, when I first one of the videos I mentioned, that that they had said, that the reason you can get high returns on here is because real estate investors are used to paying higher fees than most decentralized exchanges. This is where I found that, right. It's just talking about how is the APY generated, which is, how is your yield generated. And that's in these FAQs. And I think I pointed these out in the first video. Another resource that they have that I hadn't found yet, is this case study from one of the liquidity pools, for a property that was sold. And so if you haven't found this, I'm going to put a link to this article, in the description below as well. Just like I'll also put a link to, where you can get a free token for Lofty if you're a new member, and also some free money if you invest on Ground Floor, which is another platform that I spent a lot of time on lately, and I am, putting a significant amount of, well, I'm putting a little more money on this month, and I plan to actually move quite a bit onto it. And it's a platform where you're buying pieces of mortgages. It's quite a bit different than what we're talking about here. But I'll just like to mention that I have that there because it is a much easier platform to understand. And if you're just looking for, um, a decent yield and not a whole lot of thinking, that might be the better way to go. Um, but in any case, those links will be there. The link to this article will be there. But it answered a couple questions for me that weren't super clear. So I think if you remember that video, I mentioned that the risks weren't really described very well in the FAQs, and this sort of outlines what those are. And it's, they're talking about impermanent loss and penalty fees. And obviously you can read these, but I want to just give you my understanding of the impermanent loss. Let's say I put, it's easier to understand from the money side than it is from me putting tokens in. And you can, it's just, I'm going to just go through their example right here, right? You put in $1,000 into the pool. Someone comes along and they sell a token for $200 into that pool. Your $200 leaves, and there's now a token in the pool. Let's say, the next day you wanted to take your money out. Well, there's not actually $1,000 in that pool anymore. There's $1,000 and there's a token that somebody put in there that was $200. I guess really that typically be more like 4 tokens, but regardless, that money isn't there. And so if you try to take your money out because the pool's imbalanced, right? Because there's not the amount of USDC that it was put in in the beginning, and relative that they do the balance relative to the tokens that are in that have been staked and the USDC that's in that had been staked. And so when that's out of balance, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, so you can see, you can't actually take all that money out. And so if you try to take it out that day before that $200, and so if you try to take it out then, you're not able to take it all out, and so you make your impermanent permanent loss. And why they call it impermanent is because if you just wait, in theory, as more trading happens, somebody else is going to come and buy that token out of the pool and put the money back in. And so, as long as you wait until it's in balance, you shouldn't ever experience that impermanent loss. Now, I think there are instances, and we'll talk about those in a minute, where that might not actually be the case. And then the other risk is penalty fees. Excuse me. And so, if you're trying to they're trying to disincentivize you from taking your money or your tokens out when there's a panic and a lot of people want to take them out, and they do that by charging a penalty fee And the fee that they charge, they actually pay to whoever has still left their money or tokens in the pool. I think it's actually smart if you're trying to create this liquidity pool. You don't want it to dry up the second there's some worry, right? And so it works out well, but I noticed sometimes that penalty can be very high and relative to the money that you put in. And I'll show you that in a little bit. Um, the other thing that I had asked a lot of, or said, I wasn't sure exactly how it works, is what happens when that property is sold and they're going to shut down the pool. And this answers that exactly. What they take the pool down, you can't trade with it anymore. If there are what they call orphaned tokens in the pool, those are tokens that people sold into it. So now there's more tokens in the pool than there are people that put tokens in. Um, if you have tokens in there, you get those back. But if there are more tokens in there and you had staked the USDC, those tokens end up being sold and are used. Those proceeds are used to reimburse the people on the USDC side, um, which may or may not be, um, which should give them. It might not make them whole, but that plus the return they got from trading, depending on how long they were in there, it should at least very much reduce the risk, right? And so this is what I was talking about, where it's really important to understand what the liquidation value of those properties are, because that's what's protecting your downside in this scenario, right? A scenario where too many tokens have been sold into the pool and property is sold, and so you can't get your dollars out. You're stuck with these tokens that are being liquidated. But as long as you feel really, you're certain of that liquidation value, and when that comes in, it's more. You can actually make money on the liquidation as well. As well as having made money along the way, and so that's a possibility. This is actually talked about. They had more tokens than they had dollars, and so they had orphan tokens. I'm not sure if you had less tokens. I'm not sure that it really explains if it went the other way, because that didn't match up. Redeemed USD for the base tokens will be sent to USDC side of the pool as donations. Just add it in. Turn on the redemption smart contract. The orphan base tokens. Yeah, so and they're just assuming they're orphan base tokens. So maybe that's still an open question for me. If there are more people had well, you can't buy more than how many. Well, but yeah, if people had bought tokens out of the pool, but there were people that had staked those tokens, I guess there's just dollars for them, right? And so that's what you're hoping to get paid out anyway. So I guess that makes sense. Um, Average market price, average limit price, the amount. But so I think, one of the things you should do, take the time and read this. It is, I thought I understood it pretty well before I started making this video. But then, you can tell that it just creates I have not a perfect understanding of it, and there are some questions open for me. But what I think, what I really wanted to show you and what I think is interesting is, so, I put money in Walk, at the time it was showing, I had been making a lot of money because there was a lot of trading. There's not a lot of USDC relative to how many property tokens are in there. And so let me show you what happens when I try to take some money out of here. So I have $155 and 0.15, whatever that is. So let me say, okay, I'm trying to take that out. 0.1569. And that's what I put in roughly. I think that it didn't match up exactly, but if you see right here, there's this huge penalty, right? A $73 penalty on a $145 withdrawal, and so you see this. It doesn't match up exactly with this, and that's because of the ratio thing that I mentioned with the impermanent loss. But then on top of that, you get this huge penalty. And so there's no chance that, this is money that I just put in there a couple of days ago. I understood that there'd be penalties. I didn't, I'm very surprised at the magnitude of that penalty, right? And so when I'm putting money into pools, especially pools that are so imbalanced like this, I'm going to have to really think about, like, is this money that I'm okay not touching for a very long time? And because there's no guarantee, there's no way of knowing when that balance will happen. What would have to take place is, more people start buying out of the pool than selling into it, and so that's something to really keep in mind. But then let me show you on the other side. Let me see here. Let me find one where I have. Let's see. So let's look at Peoria, right? Where you saw when I staked this. If I wanted to withdraw this property token, and I have 25 in there, and you can see, oh wait, I didn't, that's, yeah, withdrawing 25 in there. You can see it's imbalanced towards the token side, right? And so I say, okay, it's going to give me 25 liquidity pool tokens, and I'm going to put those in, and it's just going to give me 25 property tokens, which is exactly what I put in there. And so, you see there's no loss ratio, and there's no fee. I'm just getting back exactly what I put in. And so I guess I can do that at any time. And I think the reason that they're doing that is because they really want this to be a little bit more balanced, where you have your USDC and your tokens somewhat equal. I think that will, um, I think that makes when that balance is there, I think it makes it so your property tokens should be priced closer to the what real world pricing of that property should be. But because of the lack of liquidity, um, sometimes you end up with mispricing, right? Because of that. And so, but I want to show you one more thing. Well, I just want to show you a couple more examples of um, these, and just show you like how common it is to just have a lot more tokens staked. Okay, see, this one's not too bad, right? That's pretty even. Um, let's why not just keep opening up? That was the East 175th. Or was that Westwood? Yeah, Westwood's pretty bad, right? So there's a lot of these. Walsh, I already showed you. Peoria, I showed you. Sarah is another one. And so a lot of the people, I think, had the same thought as I did: is, if okay, I have these non-performing properties, let me go ahead and stick the tokens in there. But then what happens when we have ones that are doing really well? Which is this one that I mentioned, 90 Madison. I just staked it because um, it went down. But if you look at it, there's more USDC staking this than there is Lofty tokens. I think that this is because people are looking at this and are bullish on the direction it's taking in the future, and so putting USDC, less people are willing to give up their rent and put their token in here in exchange for the returns that they're going to get from staking. And I think that's pretty interesting. Like I said, on this one, I really only got about half the rent that I had been getting. It showed that I got rent on like 10 point something tokens instead of 20 tokens, even though I staked 20. And I think it has to do with, the ratio that's in there. So what happens if I try to withdraw these 20 tokens? What do I actually get today? I think that I get okay, let's see, penalty, $24. Okay, that's not terrible. And actually I'd get all my property tokens. So that's not really that bad. It's a small penalty, relative to the amount in there. Maybe it's because it's not so far apart. But I just wanted to give you a bunch of examples of this because it is, to me, I think there's a real opportunity here. I think, a couple things have to happen to make it make sense. It's got to be one of the properties that people are trading. And so I think that, in the future, I think I'll have a few more tips to share on how you can identify those. But what I have found is, at least the ones that have really popped on here, they either just have a change in income, they have had a big change in the recent market price. So if the price has come way down, a lot of people want to get into it. Although that price might have come down because a lot of people were trading it. So, that might be the chicken or egg scenario. But this one I actually found because it just was an incredibly cheap token, so I bought it, staked it right away, and then I think other people noticed, hey, that's a really cheap price, and they were also buying. Um, I think that ones like Madison, where you have varying income, you're going to have people that are going to sell it because of that. Once the income's back up, I think you have people buying it. So you're you're only getting one. You're only getting paid for one half of that, right? Like when I'm lending tokens in there, I'm getting paid for people coming to buy from the pool. So I guess I wouldn't expect a whole bunch of people selling into it or buying from it. Well, I guess maybe they would though, as the market price goes down, which I think it will. Um, Obviously, I am still just trying to figure out a lot of this stuff. I think that you know just getting in there and doing it might be the only way that you figure it out. But you don't want to go and stick $5,000 on and realize like, hey, they're going to ask for 2,500 if I try to pull it back out, right? Which is what happened with mine with Walsh here, right? Like it's taking almost half of the money. Excuse me, if I try to pull it right back out. Um, I think that is, you know, is it worth it to have my capital at risk? Excuse me, or have it locked up? It's going to make some great returns. Yeah, for a 35% return, I'll certainly put a lot of money in here that I'm willing to not touch for a very long time. But there's no guarantee that this is going to continue. You can see it's really coming from just a few transactions, right? Like that happened over the past few days, and there's no guarantee that those are going to continue at that kind of rate. It's why I'm trying to get a decent amount of both USDC, and when you put the USDC and you pick specific properties that it goes against, I don't know that that was obvious to me when I first started. Um, but it is, I'm trying to get a little bit of a spread, a little bit of each. You can see some of these, I'm just putting a couple bucks in on one side. Whenever I'm getting my rent, I stuck my rent in there a few times and whatnot. But just to really kind of get an idea, I think the more I can see like how much I'm really making on each one, and I mean, you can go on here and look at your stats and like what they've returned. But this really just tells you the last 7 days and the last 30 days, and I think that spending time with the money actually in my account and looking at what my total APY is over that time, uh, it's going to be a lot more useful as far as data for me. And then I'll share it with you, and I think that we'll learn together and figure out if this is something that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like I said, I think there is the long term risk seems to me to be relatively low if I'm very confident in the token value and the property value. But it is, oh, and look at that. I got 2 cents in there. I'm going to go ahead and claim those rewards. You do have to claim it anytime that happens. That's kind of funny. I don't think that came from Walsh. I think I already had those 2 cents. But it is very small amounts of money, but they just keep popping in. I think I've claimed rewards 4 or 5 times today. Obviously, you don't have to be in here as often as I am. I'm spending a lot of time trying to learn. Um, Sorry to get distracted by that. I think one of the things I'm saying is uh, don't go and stick a ton of money in this if you're not willing to leave it in there. But I was saying I think the long term risk is pretty low if we're confident in our values. One of the problems is though is the that value can fluctuate if you have some serious capex issues or something, and you can't necessarily take your money out of the pool without, so that's an interesting thing to think about, just because I pegged it at a certain point in time. I think it is something that anything that I do buy tokens for and that I put in here, or anything that I'm staking on the other side of, I'm going to want to really think about that value more than just the day that I put it in. Over time, I think I'll want to keep up with some of those properties. That's a good argument for not doing this with like 100 properties, right? I want to pick ones that I feel like are going to be very popular. People are going to trade them a lot. Um, that's obviously where the money comes from, right? Is from the trading, and but that I'm also very confident in, if I ended up with orphaned tokens at the end of the day, that I'm happy with that. I think that's all I really want to share with you. I am putting all of the staking tokens, or staking videos, into a playlist, and so I'll include the link for that. That'll have those other videos that I mentioned, and this one, and any few. If you, I think you can actually subscribe to a playlist, and so then if I do future staking videos, you can just see that. I'm honestly not sure, but if you save that link, you'll be able to. I'm sorry, I should know more about all this stuff, but I don't. Until next time, I'm just going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.